So you made the decision, you're gonna move to St. Petersburg, Florida. It's gonna happen. However, stop. Before you go anywhere, you're gonna wanna stick around for these 7 different big mistakes that people make when moving to St. Petersburg, Florida, just so you're aware and making the best informed decision for your family moving forward. And you're gonna wanna stick through till at least mistake number 4, as it's one of the least talked about mistakes out there. Hi there, my name is Hayes. I am a real estate agent here in St. Petersburg, Florida. I help people looking to relocate to St. Pete make the move and have a better understanding of that process so that they make the best decision for their family. So kicking it off, let's start with the biggest one. And I say the biggest one because oftentimes it is what costs people the most amount of money, which is mistake number 1, not researching the flood zones or having an awareness of flood zones when moving here. St. Pete is a peninsula, so we have water on all 3 sides. So having an awareness on where you are on a map and where the home you're looking for and to buy is really important. Having an awareness, when I say that, I mean as in having an awareness on the elevation and what flood zone you're located in. There are a variety of different flood zones, anything from AE flood zone all the way up to flood zone X. Technically, when you're in a flood zone X, that means you don't have flood insurance required on your property. So most people that are moving to St. Pete and they're looking for an option where basically they don't have as much as a flood risk, they will be looking for places in flood zone X. And it's really important to research this because the worst thing you can do is fall in love with the house, love the area, everything about it, but then find out that, your cost of flood insurance, homeowners insurance in general, is exponentially higher just because you're located in that flood zone. There are a variety of different flood zones or areas on the map, so it's really important, whether you're working with myself or another realtor in the area, really get to understand the FEMA floodplain map and where the property you're looking for is located on that map. Super important. So from mistake number 1 of the flood zones leads me to number 2, which is not researching or understanding homeowners insurance in St. Pete, Florida in general. This is something that you definitely want to take into account, especially when you start to factor in not only your mortgage, but also how much it's just going to cost to get homeowners insurance. Premiums have exponentially risen. It's seen all over the news and also tons of publications, and also has driven some people to not buy here. The one thing you're gonna wanna take into account is getting an estimate of whatever property you're looking at. I've had clients recently that come from, let's say, the Midwest or the Northeast, and your homeowner's insurance might be $1,200 to, I don't know, at most $3,000 a year, versus those that come here, even on a $300,000 home, it can be up to $6,000 starting for an annual premium. And so these are things you really want to at least research and get a good understanding so you can factor in when it comes to the actual cost and price of your home. And just like we were talking before, if you're in a flood zone, that's just going to add to the cost as well, adding that flood insurance on top. So once these costs start to factor in, it really all just starts to add up. So of course, it's not impossible. People are able to do it. Obviously, people live in St. Pete and make it work, but it's just something you're going to want to navigate, especially if you're coming from states where it's a fraction of the cost. And personally, I always tell my clients to build in their homeowner's insurance estimate into their monthly payment costs, just so that they're not surprised when it comes to a closing table and how much that monthly cost could go up. So speaking of price leads me to mistake number 3, which is choosing a neighborhood just based on price. So this is actually a conversation I have all the time with buyers that come in. And that's specifically they're thinking just, oh, I want the X neighborhood because of this price point, and that's all I see and all I think about. And the thing is within St. Pete, we have so many different neighborhoods that they have completely different vibes with different price points. And it's something in order for you to better understand the lifestyle and where you're gonna see yourself living, it's very important to actually see it and get a good feel for what each neighborhood is, not just base it off a price point. For example, if you want walkability, nightlife, downtown is going to definitely be the area for you. However, if you're looking for obviously going for a walk on the beach every single morning, you're going to want to look more in the barrier islands and over by the beach. So yes, price is important, but lifestyle fit matters just as much. I made a whole entire video on different neighborhoods and lifestyle. I'm going to link it right here. And you're going to want to watch that before you seriously just start shopping for homes, because it will give you a good understanding of the neighborhoods. So speaking of neighborhoods and actually visiting and seeing them leads me to mistake number 4, which is not visiting St. Pete before you actually choose to move down here. You would be surprised at the amount of people I take through FaceTime, or they just don't want to actually come down here just yet, or they just honestly will make an offer and move on a house without actually taking the time to come and look at the different areas. And the thing is, the reason why I say this is obviously go for it. If you have tight timelines or, travel plans, or, you just have everything needs to happen immediately, then that's one thing. But it's a whole other thing to actually experience what St. Pete has to offer. And I say this because it's not going to be for everybody. St. Pete is an amazing culture. We talked all about that in my previous videos. But the biggest thing about it is it's definitely a specific feel for different types of people. So you have to actually come down here to really get a good understanding and grip of how it feels as a whole. What I always recommend is come down for like a 3 or 4 day visit, specifically a relocation visit. Maybe go look at different parts of town, see different neighborhoods. Even if you have time, you can even go and check out some homes that are for sale in the moment, to really get a good grasp on where everything is and where you could actually picture yourself living in each area. And this will actually give you a good amount of time to, experience the beach, or go downtown and actually try different restaurants, be able to know what the drive is like between Tampa and St. Pete. Give you a good grasp of what reality/life actually is in St. Pete. And speaking of relocation visit, this is actually a perfect time to notate, if you are looking to make the move and relocate, please feel free to reach out. My info is right here. And also, please call, schedule a time, email me, whatever works. We can actually set up an in-person visit within St. Pete to get a really good understanding of what's going to make the most sense for you and your family when you come down here. So speaking of visitors, leads me to mistake number 5, which is ignoring tourist season altogether. And so lots of people I know that have thought about relocating or have relocated with myself have made the decision when they've actually come to visit during the summer. So their family or other people will actually come for a beach vacation, rent something by the beach, maybe go pop into downtown during their visits. They're here for that high season. So they're used to seeing the crowds in the area. They love, the vibe of having that active culture here in St. Pete during the summer. The big thing though to navigate or better understand is there is a portion obviously of the year that is less snowbirds or less tourists. And it's just a different vibe. It's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. It just is. And there's a couple things with it. So the weather will be different, and we do get cooler come January, February, March even. And when I say cooler, we have some nights where it could go even into the 40s or 50s or 60s. It just depends. It's just something that people think, okay, we are always 72, 82, 92 here in St. Pete. That's not necessarily true. So having that understanding of what Florida and St. Pete is actually like is really important. It's not just tourist capital. There are those lull periods when, it's the in-between of seasons, and it's just something you want to understand. So if you're moving specifically for a quiet beach lifestyle or no people all around, this is something you just need to understand before you really do choose to make the move. So from ignoring the tourist season and the craziness of that leads me to mistake number 6, which is not accounting for the cost of living increase here in St. Pete. So this is something I've touched on a bunch, which is depending on what city you come from or what area of the United States you're coming from, there is a cost increase here in St. Pete. Obviously, if you're coming from an LA or New York City or a major city, you probably won't feel this as much. However, and I've done this actually in my cost of living video, which I'll post right here. But basically, we go over what it's like moving from a different city to St. Pete. In that video, we touched on Atlanta. However, what I've gotten feedback from, especially from clients that are coming here, is they don't realize, oh, wow, there is a jump in prices here in St. Pete. Ever since COVID/the pandemic hit and so forth, our prices have actually stuck and stayed up. I would say for a 1-bedroom apartment, you're looking for as low as, and this is for like, depending on the type of place you're getting, like quality of place, as low as 1,800 all the way up to, I mean, they can be up to 3,000, 4,000, just depend on where you are in downtown St. Pete or by the water or what part of town you're in general. And so these are things that, you really need to understand how far your dollar will go, how much, your debt to income ratio might be in terms of the quality and cost of living of where your dollar will go while you're here. On the flip side, a perk of living in Florida is we do have no state income tax. So your dollar will go a little bit further here. However, if you're purchasing a home, we do have property taxes. So it's like a endless cycle. One goes up, one goes down. Like, it's just how you kind of play with it. I think the biggest thing is just having a better understanding of what you're getting into before you just take the leap and jump right in. The top 3 things I always tell my clients, especially those relocating, are do the research, build in a buffer, and also know your numbers. So those are the main 3 things in terms of understanding that cost of living factor when moving to St. Pete. So working with your realtor, understanding that cost of living kind of works perfectly into mistake number 7, which is not working with a local realtor to make your move into St. Petersburg, Florida. I know I'm going to sound immediately biased on this because, hello, what am I doing on YouTube right now? I'm talking to relocation clients. But the big thing about it, it's true. Those that are actually in the field on a daily basis, live in the area, know the neighborhood, know the cost of living, know the vibe of the town, know also how the market is running, what the numbers are. Specifically in those specific zip codes or neighborhoods, you might be looking right in St. Pete. It honestly is priceless. And it's funny because the feedback is pretty consistent. I've had clients that will navigate or try to navigate their way on their own here, thinking they wouldn't need to use a realtor or don't need help navigating that part of the area. And you'd be surprised at just how much value it actually does bring when they start working with somebody that really knows the area, knows the neighborhoods, knows also the people and the places and the things within St. Pete. So in my personal opinion, work with someone local, work with someone who knows the people, places, and things you're looking for. Also look for somebody that is willing to at least answer your questions, whether it's 9 o'clock at night and they can actually, get on the phone and explain something, depending on, your timeline and how you're trying to navigate your move. And speaking of relocation, I have a free relocation guide right here in the comments. Also, it's right here on the screen. I highly recommend download it. It has information on houses, neighborhoods, restaurants, so many different things and questions that often come up when people are navigating the moving process, and it'll give them a better understanding on where to even start when it comes to that relocation process. So honestly, there you have it. Those are the 7 biggest mistakes that people make when trying to move to St. Petersburg, Florida. It's really important you actually understand those and, not get surprised when you choose to make your move all the way down to the sunny city. And honestly, if you do your homework on flood zones, flood insurance, homeowners insurance, prices, really research also cost of living factors, all those things, you'll be in the best position to make the best informed decision for yourself. And I highly recommend, again, using somebody local to actually help you navigate that move. My information is right on the screen. If you'd like help in this process, please feel free to call me, email me. Have had tons of clients email me when they have questions or also just want help in navigating that process. Or also they're just coming into town and want to meet so that they can, get a good understanding of what it's like to live there and see some homes while they're here as well. And speaking of homes, if you're interested in different neighborhoods within St. Petersburg, Florida, you're going to want to check out this next video, and I'm going to populate it right here. The top neighborhoods within St. Petersburg, Florida. Until next time.